Very much for CASA.
Thank you. CASA, yeah. Could I just ask a couple of questions when I get space? Are you able to take questions on the Bankstown Airport?
In regards to what, Senator?
The dilemma that's faced with their financial situation, but also some of the activity out there. Are you conscious of, where are they? Yeah.
I think it's probably in relation to the development of the airports, probably one for aviation and airports with the department, Senator.
Is it? So are you concerned? I mean, is CASA concerned? I mean, it appears to me that the build-up of the floodplain, that issue, should interest CASA. It doesn't.
Well, I don't think at this stage, sorry if I may comment, I think that issue is more around some of the land management. I don't think at this stage, to my knowledge, that issue
Well, it's got a lot to do with the operation of the airport.
I don't think it impinges on the flying, on the flight services.
It's on the land of the airport, even though that's now been leased and they've gone broke and all the rest of it. I mean, what authority did people have without any environmental clearance to shift thousands of cubic metres of dirt to them and build up the floodplain?
I think there's probably one which we'll handle when we get to Aviation Airport Centre. It deals with environmental and land use planning, which is one for the
We might
department.
have to bring them forward because we're not going to do this and run out of time at 11 o'clock tonight.
Well, we're happy to do that whenever you're ready. But I think it's not one for CASA.
Thank you.
Well, we might deal with all this aviation stuff in one block.
I just want to draw your attention to the final report of a peer review of aviation impact assessments and consultation prepared for the New South Wales Department of Planning and Environment by a group called the Airport Group in consideration of an application for the Yass Valley Wind Farm. Is that a report with which you're familiar by any chance?
I'm not familiar with the actual report. Sorry, Senator.
Okay. But certainly you and your organisation would be well and truly across technical aviation reports generally?
I suspect there's someone in my organisation who is.
Sure. What I'd be keen to, on notice if you could, having had a chance to consider the report, if you'd provide this committee with some advice on your comments on it. But if I can just take you to a couple of points and ask for your response. In the executive summary of their report to the department, they raised the question as to whether CASA needs additional powers. And if I can quote, current legislation in Australia does not allow CASA to satisfy this ICAO requirement. The current Australian aviation legislative framework does not satisfy ICAO requirements with respect to the identification and management of man-made obstacles that are located away from the vicinity of aerodromes. Before I ask you to comment, the report and recommendations of this particular group, the airport group, was that this particular wind farm should not proceed based on a number of what they saw as obstacles, I think, associated with safe aviation.
Senator, I have Mr Peter Cromarty, my Executive Manager, Airspace and Aerodrome Regulation, who might be able to assist in that area.
Thanks, Mr Skidmore. Mr Cromarty,
Peter Cromarty, Executive Manager, Airspace and Aerodrome Regulation. Senator, we have very limited powers with regard to obstacles away from aerodromes. In fact, we have very limited powers where obstacles are near aerodromes as well. However, as far as the case that you're talking about, I'm not familiar with that report. There is an organisation, a body that has been formed by the department called the Airspace Protection Task Force, which is looking at gaining powers to cover obstacles around aerodromes, but we have no other authority than to suggest to developers that they should consider and consult with various bodies such as the low-flying fraternity such as the EMS that we talked about earlier, the agricultural industry, local aerodromes that may or may not have circuit directions which are affected by the obstacles, and we leave it to the proponent of the development to talk to these people and decide what appropriate measures are taken to mitigate the risks.
So in the context of meteorological monitoring, masts, wind turbines, CASA actually doesn't have a position as such. Is that what I understand you to say, that you just simply rely on the local appraisal of a proponent and then you assess that?
That's correct. And the department did produce some guidance material for planning authorities called the National Aerodrome Safeguarding Guidelines. And in there are guidelines for planning authorities to deal with obstacles around aerodromes and away from aerodromes. But CASA doesn't have any specific power to deal with these things.
So the point that's made to me in the documentation given to me, of course, is that a wind turbine is a different structure to a tree or to a power line or whatever, simply because obviously it has the capacity to generate turbulence. And again, that's not something that of itself CASA would have any position on.
CASA's position,
generically.
CASA's position on that is that there is no scientific evidence that the wake vortices generated by wind turbines exist long enough after they've been generated by the turbine to create sufficient hazard that they would affect aircraft flight. However, we do provide guidance on that. In fact, the department's guidance provides guidance on that.
Yes. So, Mr. Murdoch, it might be a little bit wider than just CASA, but there are 3 recommendations, and perhaps rather than ask for your comments on them, I'll read them out from that report from that particular group. First of all, the recommendation that the review include the possible impact upon the signal of a navigation aid. Secondly, the recommendation of a plane of 5.24%, 3 degrees, which is extrapolated from ICAO and CASA criteria, if that's the case, and that the CASA and or the department undertake a full review on wind turbines and their impacts on aviation safety and aviation activities. Obviously, there are a number of issues. Firefighting aircraft, of course, are one only that come to mind. Crop dusting aircraft and, naturally enough, recreational aircraft in the vicinity. So if it is the case that you or that CASA don't have more information now, I won't take more time of the committee, but I would be very keen to get a response once you have had a chance to consider the report and recommendations of that group, because indeed their recommendation was, and it was accepted by the New South Wales Department, that that particular industrial wind turbine facility did not proceed.
Certainly, Senator, and the issues raised there are, as Mr Cromley's indicated, matters of great concern. Over the last 3 or 4 years, the department's been leading work to try and have state regulatory agencies, land planning agencies, look at these types of aviation issues much more seriously in their planning consideration. The reality is that the Commonwealth has limited powers in relation to such facilities. Our powers largely ascertain making sure that planning authorities require them to be properly marked. But you're right, for low-flight operations, particularly agricultural aircraft, recreational we're seeing an increasing number of hazards coming into our aviation operations. I'm happy to look at that report and come back with a full response to you in relation to it. We've got the next meeting of the Commonwealth State Group, the NASAG Group, coming up. We'll ensure that and come back to you with a full report on how that's traversing.
Thank you very much. I'm greatly appreciative. Thanks, Chairman.
Thanks, Chair.